we've mentioned previously that Django is a Python web framework which is going to allow us to write Python code that is able to dynamically generate HTML and CSS, ultimately allowing us to build a dynamic web page. So what is this now going to enable us to do that we weren't able to do previously doing just HTML and CSS? Well, using HTML and CSS web pages are static web pages. They are the same. Every time you visit the web page, that page is going to look identical. But ultimately, if you think about websites you interact with on a day-to-day basis, say like New York Times, for example, it's not going to be the case that every time you go to New York Times homepage, you're seeing the exact same HTML. The next it changes. The next day you might see a new date. You might see a new news. Whenever someone comments on article, you can see these comments, and these comments are updated day to day. So you can't just have an identical web page each time you visit that page. And so how does this process actually happen? Well, ultimately it boils down to this protocol HTTP, otherwise known as Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is the protocol for how messages are going to be sent back and forth over the internet. In this case, you can think about this as a computer. So you can, as I said, you can think about this as a computer, some way where we might call the client and then our server, which is going to be the server that's going to contain our web page. So this is the client who's going to call our server, which has this web page, and we're going to write a Django web page that's going to run on that server, and clients are going to make a request to that server, and the server is going to process that request and then return some sort of response. And that request might look something like this. So we start with the word get. Get is just an example of a request method, a way that you might try to get a page. So that just means I would like to get a particular page, and in this case the page I'm trying to get is this /page. So just denoting the root of the web page, usually the default page of the website, HTTP 1.1, just the version of HTTP that we're using, and the host is the URL we're trying to access the web page. So for example, we have example.com, demo.com, any other website, for example, that I might be trying to make a request to. So this request ultimately gets sent by my web browser, and when I type in a URL and press return, for example, the server processes that request and gives back some sort of response, and the response will generally look something like this. So beginning with HTTP 1.1, which is the version of HTTP, or some cases version 2 now, and then some sort of response code 200. 200 is a response code that just means okay, everything was okay, that page was returned successfully. So okay means 200 means that we've been returned with our web page successfully. And here on the second line we see content type text/HTML. So don't worry, demo/HTML, which just means that the format of the data that's coming back and in this response is HTML data. It's HTML data that at the user's web browser on the client side, which should be rendered as HTML. So the other content types as well, there are other and these other information that come back and that response, but the key idea is just thinking about the web in terms of requests and response. So not everything is HTML. However, this is an example for you to know, to just have an idea of requests and responses, on requests and responses.